Welcome back to the swamp, my friends. Today, we are going to be sharing some creepy and downright unexplainable park ranger stories. Joining me today are two good friends of mine, Vidiv22 and Night Dogs. I highly recommend that you check out both of their channels after this video. The links will be in the top of the description down below. You definitely are going to want to subscribe to them, as they upload great videos on scary stories and documentaries and all things creepy. Now, these stories are very creepy, and you might want to sit back and relax before you start listening to these. If you have a story that you'd like to share, whether it be a park ranger story or something else, be sure to submit them at swampdweller.net or the email you can find in the description down below. I would love to share your story with everyone here in the swamp. It's stories like yours that help keep this channel going. One last thing before we get into these stories, I would like to mention a few days ago I did have some dental surgery, so if my voice and reading sounds a little bit different, I apologize. I'm doing my best for you guys. Now, let's get into these creepy stories. You can call me Jimmy, and I'm a park ranger who has been working in this profession for roughly 12 years. Now, I want to share a story about some caves in the area I work in. We've had people go missing in the area for quite some time. Now, I know that's not exactly a strange happening in an area with caves, but there's a bit more to it than that. You see, oftentimes people will say the entrances to some of the caves will, near nightfall, appear to have voices echoing from them. This has likened those of us who work in the area to call these the dead caves. Now, that is just something those in our department use to describe the strange caves and their phenomena. That isn't really something you'll likely hear those in the area use. At least, not to my knowledge. Anyway, it's a pretty spooky thing, as I've obviously looked into this myself on a few occasions. And yes, it does indeed sound like voices come from these caves. That would be strange enough, but the thing that is stranger still is the fact that the voices sound quite real. It's as though someone was standing at the entrance and calling you there. It's eerie. Anyway, this has caused some trouble from time to time, but for the most part, people generally leave the area alone. And before you ask, no. We don't run tours of the caves, so it isn't anything like that. Even if we did, we wouldn't be doing this near nightfall. At any rate, I suppose I should get to the point. This story is very personal to me. I had my nephew go missing in these very caves a few years ago, and this story is about the time I assisted a search and rescue team to try to help find him. I suppose this story could fall under your search and rescue or park ranger stories, as I am a park ranger, but feel free to use it for either. That out of the way, my nephew had been missing for a little over 24 hours when we began our search proper. The last place we knew him to be was the caves in the area. Right out of the gate, something seemed off. His gear had been found at the entrance. This was definitely his gear too, as he always kept a sack with his name stitched into it, so if he lost his gear, or as was the case he went missing, whoever happened upon it would know who to look for, or who to return the lost gear to. It's important to note, my nephew and I had gone spelunking together on many occasions, and even a few times on our own. He wasn't new to this, and he was plenty capable of making his way through a cave, new or old, alone. So the fact is his gear was at the entrance, abandoned, was strange. Our initial thought was maybe something happened and he didn't wind up in the actual cave. As such, we had everyone who was certified to do cave search and rescue continue canvassing the area throughout the rest of the park itself. Our team continued deeper into the caves. Caves are generally dark places, and sometimes this can lead people to seeing things. What I'm about to tell you, I assure you, wasn't me seeing things. While searching the caves, we could hear screaming. The screaming sounded a lot like my nephew's voice, but it's a cave and we couldn't be sure. I shouted for my nephew, but when I did, everything fell silent. It was while panning the area I saw something rush out of the corner of my eye. It looked like human feet. I quickly pointed out what I saw and we proceeded in the direction I saw the feet. When we got to where I had seen things though, there was no one there. I began to grow worried. The screaming we had heard earlier sounded horrific, the kind of screams you would likely hear if someone was being tortured. This spurred me and the search team to look so quickly. We searched for hours, and when we didn't turn up anything, we were ready to head out for the day as night would be coming soon. Almost as though something or someone was listening, we heard a very distinct voice. It was my nephew's voice, and he seemed to be crying and asking for help. We called out in response to the voice, but all we heard was a continued plea for help. It was like a tape being played over and over, repeating the same broken, "Help!" before eventually stopping altogether. This made us push forward with what only few hours we had left to search somewhat safely. I remember frantically scrambling and internally praying my nephew was okay. As we continued our search though, things were becoming less hopeful. We found one of his shirts in the cave. It was torn pretty badly and had blood heavily soaked into it. It was at this point I remember reeling in worry and feeling the tears begin to well up. One of the members of the team asked me to fall back and I tried to fight them on it, but they were right. I needed to take a moment to step back, and part of me was afraid that I might find something that I don't want to see. The search would continue for another few weeks, and no matter how hard they searched, they never found anything outside of, identifying clothing. Nothing that would lead us to my nephew. Some things really bother me about this whole search, outside of the obvious thing, being I hurt for my missing nephew. Why was my nephew's gear at the entrance of the cave? Another thing that bothers me is if his gear was there, how the hell did he get so deep into the cave itself? Finally, where did he go? Caves are vast and massive things, and there's a strong chance he's still in there somewhere, or his remains are. It has become obvious as time goes on that he is no longer with the living. That is a reality I and the family have come to accept, and have had to accept that he is gone. It still hurts typing this out, honestly. I wish I had answers as to who or what brought him that deep into the cave. I still work in the area, and we still don't have any answers. Sometimes, though, I swear I hear his voice when I stand at the entrance to the cave. Whatever happened to you, my nephew, I pray you are in a better place now, and resting peacefully.
My name is Elizabeth. You can call me Liz for short. And I've been working for the Park Rangers service for a little over a year and a half. Because I've been working there for such a short time, and because I'd rather no one knows where I work or the area I live in, I won't be sharing that information. I wish to share an experience I had while working a job I still love today. To get to the point, we have a rather large park ranger department, and so, I'll admit, it was a little overwhelming when I first started there. That said, I quickly became friends with one of my shift partners, who we'll call Martin. We talked, laughed, and always found a way to pass the time, even during more mundane shifts. I felt comfortable talking to him, and I'll admit, I may have had a bit of a crush on him as well. That said, I'm a professional, and I kept our working relationship just that. Professional. It was a Friday, and we were all going home when another one of my coworkers pulled me aside and asked if they could talk to me for a second. I'll call this girl Clary. Thinking everyone was pretty cool so far, I figured I'd chill a moment and chat with Clary. The entire time she talked to me, she was nervous and fidgety. I asked if she was okay, but she just kept nodding. I smiled and told Clary I had to get back, but if there was anything she wanted to say, I could stick around for another minute or two. That was when she asked if I wanted to go to the bar and have a few drinks. She went from super nervous to oddly calm quickly and began talking about how she was rather bored on weekends and didn't know too many people in the area. I just wanted someone to chat with who felt like she might be able to relate to or who could give advice, that sort of thing. I think in actuality, she felt more comfortable talking to another woman. Also, I'm only 5'4", and so I'm probably not that threatening. At least that is my thought process behind what she was thinking. I told her I had no plans, so sure, we can meet up and hang out. So later that night, I was getting ready to head to the bar when I stepped outside for a moment to smoke. Yes, I know, terrible habit, but I love it. So save your judgments for someone who cares enough to quit. Anyway, as I'm lighting up a cigarette, I look down and notice the tires on my Explorer are flat. Looking more closely, I notice all 4 tires are flat, and that they look as though they've been slashed. Now I'm feeling a little unsettled. I'm looking around, but I see and hear no one. Slowly, I step back inside and lock my door before calmly calling the police. I put out my cigarette and explain how I was going to head to the bar, but I find my tires have been slashed. Dispatch says someone is on the way, and so I wait. It takes them a bit to arrive as I'm pretty far out in the middle of nowhere, and it generally isn't a quick trip to me, especially from the sheriff's station. Upon their arrival, it dawns on me how strange things are as a whole, and there doesn't appear to be vehicle tracks or anything leading up to my dirt driveway other than my own. Now, someone could be on foot or very careful about covering their tracks, but again, I live way out in the middle of nowhere. So after the sheriff wraps up their report, I call Clary. I had all my co-workers' numbers in case of a work emergency, and they had mine, and explained the situation. She's bummed, but she then asks where I live and explains she'll pick me up if I still want to go out. I explained that I appreciate it, but I really don't want to go anywhere after everything, and so we both agree to go out another night. It takes me a while to go to bed, but when I finally do, I'm sleeping hard. The next morning, I get up and have some coffee and a cigarette. It is as I'm sitting there that Clary calls and asks if I want to go out next Friday, and even offers to pick me up from work next time until I can get my tires fixed. I thank her and we agree on this. Saturday night rolls around, and I'm about to head to bed when I hear a loud bang. It isn't persistent, but it's like someone hauling up and hitting my front door or something. It's enough to take me by surprise and make me leap 5 feet in the air. I grab my gun and head for the door. I rip it open and aim outside. It is completely silent. No one appears to be around. I notice some minor damage to the door, but nothing that would tell me who or what hit it. I shut the door, keep my gun nearby, and lock up for the night before heading to bed. It isn't long before I pass out. The events up to this point were strange, but I'm not easily scared, so it doesn't take me long to get to sleep, whereas I'm sure a lot of people might be bothered a bit more by it. Also, I have my gun. Anyway, the rest of the weekend goes by with no strange happenings or odd goings-on. Monday morning, I'm up early and ready to head out with Clary to work. I ask if she can come with me when I get my car towed after we get paid. She agrees, and Wednesday evening we get my car fixed. Clary and I are getting along really well by this point, and I'm grateful for her. We started to discuss our Friday plans, and we are mentally ready for the weekend, and we decide we'll hit the bar and see where the night takes us from there. Thursday is here quicker than ever, and I've come up a little early to help with the inspection of the national park. I'm doing my morning routines, and I have Clary and Martin with me. We're all chatting and enjoying our time when we suddenly hear a loud pop and one of our tires blow, causing me to lose control of the truck and make me crash into a tree. I check to be sure everyone's okay, and once I verify that we all get out to look around. It appears the tire that blew had something lodged in it. It was like razor wire, but looked more primitive in its creation. It was a rope with some kind of blades embedded within. This was strange and made us all feel uncomfortable. We tried to radio to the station, but we're the only ones on shift at the moment. Our boss would likely be there within an hour or so we couldn't do much but wait or head back without the truck. Knowing this, Martin, Claire, and I just kind of chilled for a bit and kept an eye out. We began discussing what happened based on what we pieced together. We were beginning to feel a little uneasy, as whoever had placed the trap had done so intentionally. That much was obvious. This made us on edge, and we decided at the moment to try and walk back to the station. It was while walking there that things grew quiet. Too quiet. There wasn't any real sound, and even the wind wasn't moving. We tried shaking it off and continued on, A few minutes later, we heard what sounded like our boss's voice, but our first instinct was to shrug it off and head towards the voice, but we got closer, it sounded more distorted. Something didn't feel right, and we weren't exactly sure what it was. Our boss likely wouldn't have come out to find us so soon, and also, even if he had, something in the voice was really off. It was almost like something mimicking his voice. Weirded out, we continued onwards and tried radioing the station again, just in case our boss got there early. There was no response. I looked at my watch and realized our boss should have gotten in by now. I figured we would give it a few more minutes and we would try again. That's when we noticed the stench of rotting meat. I felt nausea hit me quickly, and that's when I saw something that turned me ghost white. There was a tall, emaciated figure with a skull for a head, staring down at us. At first, I thought it might have been some kind of weird art, but when it turned its head to look at us, I knew we had to run, and fast. We did just that. And as we ran, we heard the thing drop off the hill and come after us. The three of us felt terrified as we pushed forward, and Martin quickly stopped. I stopped, turned and asked him if he was stupid. He gave this forgiving me look and ran in a different direction. The thing that was chasing us quickly followed in his direction. I remember screaming Martin's name, and Claire frantically getting onto her radio and calling the station. We got a response from one of our co-workers asking if we were okay. They sounded just as frantic as we tried to rush back to the station. When we arrived, several sheriff officers were coordinating off the area. Our boss had been attacked by what police said was likely a bear. He was alive, but he looked terrified. I quickly explained to the sheriff that we had been attacked in the woods. I then explained how Martin split from us and lured the thing we were attacked by away. I tried to plead with them that it wasn't a bear, but they thought maybe we were delirious from shock. I remember how angry I was. But, I don't blame them for not believing what we saw. With all that said, they did immediately start a search as they did believe we had been attacked. Sadly, Martin was never found. He still hasn't been seen or heard from in days. I honestly believe he's dead. That sounds grim, and it's really messed up, but what other explanation do you really have? I'm working in a different area now, but Claire and I are still friends today. We miss Martin, and if you take anything from this story, please remember to be safe out there. There are things out in the woods and in this world that we can't explain. I don't wish anyone to ever go through what my boss, Claire, and I have, and I sure as hell wish for no one to ever wind up like Martin.
My name is Erica, and I'm a 32-year-old park ranger who's been in the park rangers in Alaska for 10 years now. I really enjoy the frontier feel of Alaska, and how much it isn't really touched by man or modern man at least. There are a lot of woods and mountains, and it's a great place to live. If you're someone who likes to mind your own and be away from people, there are plenty of places for you that make you seem like you're just in heaven, and I would recommend living right here if that's who you are. My story takes place in December while working on the job. I was enjoying nature and the cold while killing time near the end of my shift. I had finished everything I needed to do for the day and then some, and didn't have a real excuse to cut out early, so I figured I'd drive around and kill some time while I waited to pass the final hour of my shift. It was while doing this that it began to snow, and I'm talking sudden snowing that wasn't forecasted. It was hard enough and windy enough that I couldn't tell about the direction I was headed in, or if I was still headed straight at all. Because of this, I decided to slow down and stop the truck. I couldn't really step out as it was too cold and windy at the time, and I figured if this snowstorm was so sudden, it was likely it'd be out just as quickly as it had arrived. This extremely optimistic position of mine was slowly ruined as the hour passed and I was supposed to be back at the station and clocking out. I tried to radio back, but the weather was too powerful and all I could get on the truck radio was static. Figuring there wasn't much to do, I hunkered down and just thought about snuggling up next to a warm fire later that night and how nice it would feel once the storm finally passed. About an hour went by and I still couldn't get anywhere. I was beginning to get worried now, as this was a strong and sudden storm, and as such, it was likely snow had begun to accumulate to the point to where I might not be able to get out before long. I decided I'd stay in the truck, however, as going out would be suicide, and this was the warmest place I could be. Another hour goes by and I try to radio again, but I get nothing. I'm beginning to feel the fear welling up on my stomach. I'm not exactly prepared for the weather at hand. I'm dressed warmly as it is Alaska during the winter, but I'm not prepared to be out here for a long period of time, nor was I expecting to be. Part of my mind calms itself down when it sets in that they have to be looking for me. My boss wouldn't leave if I hadn't clocked out. I wasn't outside an area they wouldn't be able to find me, but again, the snow is vicious in its fall at this point, and maybe they're unable to search for me properly. Another hour goes by and I try the door. I can't open it. The snow has begun to bury my truck and now I'm really starting to become fearful for my life. It is getting dark, not that I can tell the difference in the storm itself, and it dawns on me that I might have to spend at least the night out here. I try to radio one more time, but it's all static. The storm is interfering with everything, and I find myself unprepared and without any sign of aid coming. It isn't long before I hear a loud thud against the passenger side door. I jump at first and call out shortly after. I hear nothing in response. I then hear a roar that sounds similar to a bear. I begin to panic, but I stop and remind myself the bear doesn't know I'm in here. For sure, and it isn't likely to get inside. I can hear it jump onto the front of my truck and climb on the top. I hear it sniffing around and then roar one more time before I feel it drop off the back of the truck, and soon after it leaves. The truck shakes as the weight of the bear is relieved from it, and soon everything falls quiet once again. It isn't long before it is 10 at night and I'm beginning to shiver from the cold. I'm still unable to open my door, and I'm quite sure the exhaust pipe in the truck is buried. Because of this, I don't want to turn the truck on for fear of carbon monoxide poisoning. I instead curl up and try to conserve whatever warmth I have while waiting for help to arrive. I'm cold, unprepared, and hungry. I'm afraid I may die out here, as it is extremely cold and I'm not sure if I can stay warm enough to even survive the night. Eventually, I drift off to a half sleep. I still remember the dream because I was dreaming I was warm, next to a nice fire, and I couldn't have been further from my actual situation, mentally. I'm awoken at about 3 or 4 in the morning, and it dawns on me that I feel like a popsicle at this point. I can't feel my toes or anything else, for that matter, and there's the sound of something mechanical going on outside. I can hear voices, and when my brain finally catches up, I feel myself filled with relief, as one of the voices is my boss. They found my truck. The storm had subsided and they were digging me out. I wound up being rushed to the hospital where I was treated for several things, one of which included losing my pinky and ring finger on my right hand due to frostbite. I made a full recovery otherwise, but I did spend a little while in the hospital and on paid leave while recovering. I'm alive and grateful for that, every day.
I'm going to keep this brief. A few years ago, while I was working, I was a park ranger around Louisiana, 20 years retired now. I saw something I don't know how to explain in the woods. The thing I saw was roughly 12 feet tall and it was extremely hairy. It moved quickly too. I know this because it chased me out of the woods one fall morning in October a few years back. I was patrolling the area, looking for anyone that might be causing trouble or anything that might need doing when I came across this creature. I didn't quite believe my own sight at the time, but it was very much real. I'm not going to claim it was Bigfoot or anything, as I'm a pretty skeptical person, but it was big enough to be something like that. It was super aggressive though. I showed up, saw it, and as though it could sense me, it turned and looked at me. It immediately let out this strange call, and that's when I see one of its buddies coming walking from further in the woods. Again, my eyes are just seeing things, I think, but I'm just thinking I have to be hallucinating. Suddenly, the both of them let out an angry call, and the one I initially saw starts running right for me. Now, I'm a country boy born and raised, and I've seen some things, so I don't spook easily, but this, well, it had me turning and running in terror. I didn't hesitate either as this thing let out a call. I call it a call as I can't even truly describe the sound that came from this thing, and it shook me where I ran. I was convinced at this moment I was going to die from something no one likely knows or even has proof that it exists. I'm older now and I don't run the fastest, and I was convinced I'd be dead soon, but as I reached the tree line, this thing stopped. I took a break to breathe and looked back, and it stared, and it let out another call. I was convinced by this point it might still come after me, but then it turned and walked off slowly into the forest. Now, you gotta understand, the thing likely could have caught up to me if it wanted, probably killed me. So, while aggressive, I'm not convinced it was out to kill me, per se. I think it was just likely saying, hey, this is my territory, or home even. It just wanted me to get the heck out of Dodge. I don't rightly have a better explanation, honestly, as again, it could have easily killed me. At any rate, I thought I'd share this story with y'all, and hopefully it's used. I hope y'all know I never went back to those woods the rest of my career. I stayed right at the station, which is where I should have stayed to begin with. I'm retired now, though, and I'm quite happy. Thank you for letting me share my story.
I've been working as a park ranger for roughly 17 years. In all that time, I've had a few experiences I would deem strange, and one I would even deem scary. The one I'm going to share with you is a little bit of both. Mostly was terrifying for me. You can call me Trent, by the way. I believe it was 2009, and my team and I were working to clean the area and get it ready for the summer camping season here in Colorado. Now, it's a national park, so there's not a ton we have to do. We like to go around and do cleanup in our area, as you do. As obviously, people don't really bother and quite honestly really care about cleaning up after themselves. It's one of those things that gets on my nerves. It isn't hard to clean up your trash, but anyway, that's, another topic. It was getting later and I volunteered to stay later that evening to make sure as much cleanup was in order as possible. The idea, for me at least, was to get as much done as I could while we still had light. It being summer soon, we had plenty of light in comparison to the fall and winter, when it gets dark stupid early. It wasn't long before everyone was clocking out, and I told them all bye and I'd see them on Monday. None of my crew I worked with on my shift worked weekends, though we did have a few within the department itself who did. An hour goes by and then two, and before I know it, I'm so wrapped up in my tasks that I look up and realize I'm losing daylight. Thinking little of this, I put myself in another gear and try to get more done. In my mind, I figure it'll just be better prepared and leave less to do on Monday. Also, I take great pride in my work, so I tend to do anything I can no matter how large or small the task. It's a large part of what has led up to the promotions I've been given and is something I still do to this very day. It isn't long before I realize the sun is about to set completely. I stop my work, pull out my flashlight, and prepare to haul my last garbage bag back to the station and drop it in the dumpster. It is as I'm wrapping things up I hear a large growling sound. I immediately grab my bear spray as I recognize the sound I'm hearing. Turning around, slowly, I see something that leaves me in shock and dread. It looks to be a black bear, but the problem is, it is much, much larger than any black bear I have ever seen or ever known to exist. This thing was a large bear. This thing had a large scar across the left eye and was staring at me, baring its teeth. Now, normally, I do something to make the bear think I'm bigger than it is, but no. I was terrified, and no amount of posturing is going to save me from something this size. It didn't seem possible. On all fours, this thing looked to be 12 to 13 feet tall. I didn't believe my eyes at first, but there was no denying it. The thing stood in the air, and I about peed myself in fear. I wanted to run. I knew running would only encourage it to give chase. I didn't exactly feel safe standing here, though. So, I continued to keep my eyes on this thing as it slowly backed away. The thing was, I'd found my way far off the trails and was quite a ways from the station itself. Normally this isn't an issue, but, of course, being me, trying to be an overachiever, I got screwed. I'm sitting there thinking about what my next move might be, while I'm very slowly backing away. I know it isn't wise to stare this thing down, but there was also no way I was going to turn my back to this bear either. I have my hand on my mace and the other hand is holding the garbage. After what feels like an eternity, I am finally out of sight of the bear. It appears to have just stared at me, but now I'm worried the reason it was attracted to me was it was looking for the food in the garbage I was carrying. While what I'm carrying is nothing that I'd eat, it did have some old food in it. I'm sure it's nothing a bear would think twice about if it was hungry enough. And if I was the size of this thing, I'd be hungry all the time. After several minutes of watching the horizon and seeing nothing, I turn and start hauling my butt as fast as I can toward the station. It is still quite a ways off, but I figure I could probably get there if I keep hauling butt. I'll get there in no time. It is while running that I suddenly hear a large stomping sound behind me. Looking back, the bear is coming in fast. I freak out and throw the bag of trash I have off at a different direction. My hope is that it would just want the food, and I could come back another day and clean up what was left. But unfortunately ignored it entirely and kept coming for me. I am now forced to turn and stand my ground as there is no way. I'm going to outrun this thing, there's just no way. I stop and pull the bear mace off my belt and prep to spray the thing. It stops and eyes me, and then the mace, and then me again. It's only a few feet from me now, and to my shock, it seems very aware of what I'm ready to do. The look of this bear made it seem like it was calculating its next move. I've seen a lot of bears and usually they'll scare off without too much trouble or even just mind their own business entirely. This one though, the look on its face just said it was hunting, and I was on the menu. It seemed disturbingly intelligent, and as it stepped forward, I reacted in shock and sprayed it in the face with my mace. The bear reeled back. I ran for my garbage bag, though looking back I'm not sure why I did that, and I continued my sprint toward the direction of the station. I heard the most terrifying roar I've ever heard in my entire life, and this was followed by a large, now all too familiar stomping sound. I'm feeling my legs begin to give away from fear, but I tell myself if you give out now you're dead. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. So, I gain the mental fortitude to keep pushing through and keep steady as I run. It is as I'm getting closer to the cabin I feel the thing running up on me from behind. I freak out and spin to see where it's at, tripping as I do and falling on my butt. The thing had taken a swipe and left a deep claw mark in the tree where my head was only seconds before. It thrashes about blindly, and during the thrashing and my struggle to get up, it hits my can of spray and dislodges it from my grip. It does this with enough force for my hand to fly back and hit the tree. I see blood and feel pain as my hand smacked the tree. Unsure if I had broken my right hand, I used my left hand to stand up again. For reasons I'll never be sure of, perhaps shock and some semblance of normalcy, I grab the trash bag with my left hand and turn and continue sprinting. The bear is roaring behind me, but it doesn't appear to be giving pursuit. It isn't long before I reach one of the main trails and can see the cabin in the distance. Terrified, I keep running. Soon enough, there is a roar so loud I am not ashamed to admit I'd peed myself a bit, followed by the familiar stomping of this bear. I freaked out and just keep telling myself, don't look back, don't look back, do not look back. I run with all the power and speed I can muster. I make it to the station. I open the door and slam it shut, locking it behind me. As I do, I feel the door's foundation shake as this bear seems to be slamming against it. I barricade the door with some tables and what I can find immediately. I also use the phone to call 911. The dispatcher answers and I'm doing my best to explain where I am in my situation. I know how crazy it sounds, and the dispatcher reassures me help is on the way. It doesn't take the police more than 5 minutes to arrive. To me at least, it felt like 5 hours. By the time they came knocking, I feel myself leap up in shock and terror at the sound. It is then I remove the tables and slowly open the door. I am shaking as I try to explain the entire situation, and I feel tears involuntarily begin to stream down my face as I try to explain the impossible situation to the cops. Eventually, an officer sits with me, and so does the sheriff, and they try to take time to calm me down. They ask if I need medical attention, and I tell them no. They insist anyway, as I seem to be in shock. I don't remember much of that part. That's what they tell me when I went to the hospital. As I was leaving the station, I remember looking back at the door and seeing a large claw mark on our door. Now, I haven't seen this bear since that day. It hasn't turned up, and as far as I know, no one has been attacked by it. All that said, this is a situation that will stay with me for the rest of my lifetime. Thanks for listening to these creepy and downright unexplainable park ranger stories. If you enjoyed these stories, please be sure to hit that like button. And if you're new to the swamp, why not join us? Hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications to never miss a new video, as I upload them almost every single day, and all things natural and supernatural. If you have a story that you would like to share in a future video, whether it's a park ranger story, a search and rescue story, or something completely different, be sure to submit it at swampdweller.net or the email you can find in the description down below. I would love to share your story with everyone here in the swamp. It's stories like yours that help keep this channel going. Much love and appreciation to my friend, Vidif22, and my other friend, Night Dogs, who helped me read these stories today. If you enjoyed their voices, please be sure to check out their channels and subscribe. You can find the links to do so in the top of the description. They upload very creepy videos almost every single day, just like me. Now, if you're not aware, you can download your favorite scary stories from the swamp on iTunes, Spotify, Podbean, Stitcher Radio, and just about every other major podcast platform out there. If you made it all the way to the end, be sure to comment the code word, Red Circle, to let me know that you made it to the end and to confuse anybody who didn't. I always love seeing how creative you guys get with your responses down there. I'll see you guys soon with another creepy video.